Well, it's all mock now. I mean, that's almost entirely what we're seeing. There are a few laggards out there for sure, but by and large, if anybody has any technical competency or common sense, they're buying
Yeah.
mock based anything. Seeing a ton of GraphQL. I'm seeing a ton of Jamstack. I'm seeing Netlify everywhere. I'm seeing commercetools really winning in the commerce space. I see a lot of contentful content stack and the CMS side. Just across the board, I think we're really winning out over those legacies. So it's kind of cool to see.
Hi there. I'm Sam Bhagwat. I'm the co-founder of Gatsby, now a principal DX engineer at Netlify. And I'm here with Kelly Goetsch, who is the chief strategy officer at commercetools, which is, how would you describe commercetools, Kelly?
We are the leader in next generation commerce. So we offer a big library of 300 individually consumable REST APIs. We offer commerce functionality like shopping cart, product catalog, pricing, users, promotions. We're a full multi-tenant SaaS. We invented headless commerce, and we are co-founders of the Mock Alliance.
Awesome. Great to be with you here, Kelly, and really kind of excited to dive into Mock and really the whole kind of composable space. So I think, like, maybe broadly speaking, a good place to start is, how have you seen sort of the space evolve over the last kind of couple of years?
Well, I joined commercetools in 2016. And when I joined, the legacy approach was still very dominant, which was, I'm going to download some software, put all my stuff on top of it, and then I'm going to deploy it out to an app server. And I might use a cloud for compute hosting only, but it's really just hosting, not cloud in any way. And that was the default. And we were out there at the time pitching headless, which we invented, backed by microservices, full multi-tenant SaaS. And those first few years, it was a slog. It was challenging because everybody said, well, I want this in my four walls. I don't want cloud. I want it in my data center. What's microservice? It was crazy. Where's the head? Why aren't you feature complete? Where's the head? Right.
Yep. Yeah. And we saw,
and now it's really changed,
because like we saw the sort of the opposite, kind of like, okay, great. Like, this is a cool, these are some cool frameworks and cool technology, but like, how do you put the puzzle together? And now there's just been like such a convergence.
Yeah, no, 100% agreed. And it's great to see. This space has definitely matured. So I'm glad that's worked out well for both sides here.
Yeah, it really feels like we're starting to see this kind of like growing movement and understanding of how to kind of put all the different parts together. So I think like one question that I like to ask is, what are the key folks that you see moving over? Like, what types of customers, like whether that's like industry and vertical, or whether that's, maybe something more specific to their business model, tends to be the folks who are moving over now?
It tends to be those doing a lot of their money through direct-to-consumer e-commerce. So the retailers out there, the digitally native vertical brands, the telcos, all of those types of organizations where, they're making most of their money online somehow. Right? Grocery, we see, anything like that is quite popular because there's a direct revenue component there. And you can quantify, if you have X percent of checkouts fail because of sloppy code, you can quantify that, right? It's easy to quantify.
Yeah. And where do you see these projects kind of being driven by? Is it sort of that ROI calculation, being driven over on the business side? How much of it do you see coming from the developer side, or, maybe somewhere else entirely?
It's usually a good combination of business and tech, right? Clearly, there's a business need of some sort. In some cases, there's too much technical debt with whatever legacy platform they had. Sometimes the legacy platform is discontinued. Whatever that happens to be, it's both sides of the organization. Both sides have direct pain.
Yeah. And I would kind of like dive into sort of, can you talk about some of the pain that you sort of see on each side of the organization?
On the technology side, people are spending way too much time with really old, outdated stuff. They're having to deal with JBoss and WebLogic and, all of that kind of old stuff, right? And that's really hard. It's hard to find developers for that. It's hard to deal with it. Just for a lot of reasons, it's complicated. And no developer wants to get out of bed and troubleshoot a WebLogic deployment, right? Like that just doesn't happen these days. So, that's more on the tech side. And then on the business side, the big challenge there is lack of ability to iterate with new functionality. So when I was doing consulting work years ago, it was pretty common to deploy once a month to production, if you can imagine that. I mean, literally once a month was the default. And, the Amazons out there, the Amazons out there are releasing to production multiple times a day. They're constantly releasing to production.
So on the business side, the challenge is lack of ability to iterate.
Uh-huh.
And when you can't iterate, you then cannot innovate, because many times it takes quite a few releases to perfect a feature and start generating some revenue.
Yeah. And who in these organizations typically sort of like sees the pain first, and how does the conversation kind of proceed? Like how does the realization kind of like grow within organizations?
It's a CDO, it's a CMO, it's a CIO, CTO. It's typically somewhere a little bit more senior in the organization. They have P&L responsibilities. It's more that where there's somebody out there who's getting a bonus based on performance, and nothing is performing. Performance, I mean financial performance, right?
Yeah. Is there a way to, because this is something we've sort of like seen as well. We've seen there's sort of like a pain from like a developer standpoint. So like devs who like just really want to ship faster will sort of like complain until like, and maybe build something else and sort of go off. But there's often kind of like from a business side, it's almost like it has to come from a higher level, like to your point, sort of almost like a CEO type person. There isn't as, how does that responsibility kind of, or that realization sort of go a little bit lower in the organization, kind of on the business side?
I think what's important is to find unique pieces of functionality that need updating and that need to be fixed, and pilot this new approach further down within an organization. So maybe you find someone who is responsible for promotions and they need a new promotions engine, right? That's not going to rise to the CEO level. And that's totally something a mid-level person, tech or business could pick up and do and make a decision, buy something. I mean, maybe build something, but you could absolutely make that work. And then you do enough of those, and pretty quickly you've got a groundswell of support for this new approach.
Yeah, because I think there are a lot of people that are listening to this, are going to listen to this, that are working in a larger organization and are at that mid level, at the director level on the business side, perhaps, and they sort of see a lot of these kind of pieces, but change is hard within an organization, and they're not really sure where to start or what progress looks like.
Correct. But look for where there's business pain. That's really the key, is look where there's pain. Also look where maybe you've built something in decades past, but now there's an off-the-shelf product for that. We see a lot of that as well, where price optimization software is really popular these days. That didn't really exist that long ago. Anything like point of sale, shopping cart, those are all nice granular chunks of functionality that you can absolutely buy off the shelf for next to nothing. Don't tell my salespeople I said that, but the cost of this stuff is not terribly high, and that's a commodity, and that's a good thing. And we're proud to sell commodities, right?
Oh yeah, I think so. And I'm curious with your experience watching folks go through this transformation, right? How do you see like the migration path? For example, is it someone kind of decides one day we're going to do this, and then there's kind of a long project to do it? Is it sort of a lot of these little pieces get picked up off the shelf and put in, and then like there's kind of this growing realization of like, hey, maybe that we've gotten, 6 different independent vendors and we have our monolith, maybe we don't need our monolith as much anymore. Like how do you see the projects kind of evolving over time?
In most cases, there's a project, it's funded from the board down to replace some legacy thing, whatever that thing happens to be. And maybe there's a renewal coming up and they don't want to sign a 3-year, $5 million renewal with some vendor they don't like anymore. Maybe the product has been discontinued. Maybe they brought in a new CIO who says, I don't want to deal with this. There's a better way to do it. But any one of those things, maybe the business gets acquired. There's typically some type of compelling event. There's some event there that folks are forced to take a decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I that.
Definitely. Because I go back to sort of, I think a lot of people listening to this will be on that kind of director level, are looking to make change, but, don't necessarily lead the entire organization and don't have the bandwidth for that capacity. You kind of mentioned earlier that you see a path forward being kind of prototyping, building sort of like these smaller projects. Can you give some examples of success stories that you've seen sort of going down that road?
A lot of our customers are retailers and they have a brand in Canada or Mexico or, some small country, with no offense to the Canadians or Mexicans, but like not their flagship.com. Right. And our customers are, anybody VP plus is thinking, whether they say it or not, they're only able and willing to take risk insofar as that they won't get fired for doing it. We're all like that, right? We all have an internal, how much can I push the envelope here before I get fired? And if you're an SVP or CIO or something and you go and make a big change and you screw it up, you're going to get fired, as you should. So the key is finding something that's small enough that it wouldn't have to be reported to your CEO. It wouldn't have to be reported in an earnings call if you screw it up, but also something big enough that you can pilot it. So a lot of our customers will have like an off-label or a discount brand, or maybe it's a designer specific subsite, but it's typically something, right? It's very, very, very rare just to have a big flagship.com and nothing else. They'll do, a luxury brand for Luxembourg, for all 10 people who live in Luxembourg. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but
for the important yet small country wedged in between France and Germany.
Don't mess with your big.com is what I would say, until you've demonstrated some confidence. And so they'll either pick a small brand and do that, and they'll pick their flagship.com, but they'll move pieces at a time. They'll move pricing over 1 week. They'll move promotions over the next week, and they'll just chip away at it.
Yeah. Do you see that pattern differ at all between like different industries or verticals? Are there playbooks for one industry that like are different for another industry? Like what sort of variation do you see in that kind of onboarding path?
There's quite a big difference in industries, and it's down largely to business model and maturity. Like the B2C customers, our current B2B is 5 years behind them, and then telco is a little bit further behind, in the B2C side. We see some direct to consumer brands in there. It's a pretty wide range. If their business model is more on the marketing side, but not actually the buying side, right? If they're building brands as opposed to selling something, they're more likely to just outsource it to a vendor who does a little bit of everything, which is fine. I get that. So it's all over the place, but I would generally say our customers are those who are able to tie it back to revenue pretty quickly and demonstrate to their stakeholders.
B2C ahead of B2B. Businesses that do it kind of in-house ahead of businesses that are outsourcing it to agencies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think Mark Damney's point, and we were talking about this once, was his point is like, look, either you're going to, as a marketing team in a business, you either have to make a big investment in your website or a big investment in your marketing automation software. And if you're primarily a B2B company, it's, it's easier to see the chips falling over on that side. And if you're a B2C company, it's easier to see the chips falling over on your, website, your digital presence side.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Can you like walk through? So we've talked a lot about the process, because I think the process is important. The process is often the thing that isn't talked about. We often talk about the results, which is great. We should talk about the results, but sometimes, the hard part is not the results. It's believing you can get there, because again, change is hard. We all know that as humans. We especially know that as humans who are used to working in organizations where change involves consensus. And involves building consensus over time, and it involves demonstrating proof points. So like, what sort of results have you kind of like, seen, and what are the different categories of results you've seen from companies undergoing this kind of transformation?
I think the first is release frequency. They can go from releasing once a month to releasing 10 times a day. So that's a big benefit, and you can quantify that because you can get features out much faster. So that's one. The second is performance gains. A lot of those old legacy monoliths are pretty slow. It's a 200, like 2 seconds, 3 seconds to load on the server side, like that's really slow. And we're like 200 milliseconds, so that's helpful. There's also a much larger pool of talent that you can hire, because to work with us, you only have to work with a cloud. So you inject serverless functions in, and you can then execute functions in response to events going out. So you're working with APIs, functions, and events. So that's much more beneficial. There's also an availability thing. Lego.com had crashed 6 out of 7 years on Black Friday. They switched over to us. They've been live with us for 6 years. They've never had a single outage. Like, there's real benefit to not failing. So that's important. And then finally, there's cost. It's dramatically cheaper to buy commoditized multi-tenant SaaS APIs from a vendor like us than it is to build this stuff. So get your developers able to focus much more on cool features and that kind of thing, as opposed to, focusing on the keeping the lights on.
Yeah. And how long do you typically see these transitions taking?
3 months to 3 years.
Okay, and how what makes it go on one side versus the other side?
The folks with in-house teams that know what they're doing technically, that have been on cloud for years, that have been headless, that have an empowered leader who likes making change and is able to do so effectively, and has an organization that supports him or her, that's 3 months. And they'll go really quick. Sometimes they'll just big bang it and be done with it. And that's great. We also see some organizations, I would say the average probably takes 6 to 9. All right. That's a pretty common, maybe a year. I've seen organizations take 3. And that's because in many cases, they are utterly paranoid as leaders within an organization. So as a result, they move very, very, very slow. And the priorities of the organization are keeping the lights on. Don't do anything that's going to get you fired. We see a lot of that. And look, I get it. Some organizations just move slow like that. And people in those organizations move slow. And I mean, to be honest, it's fine with us because they're still paying us, right? I mean, they can take as long as they want, and ultimately as long as they get live. But it's all over the place.
Also, if you're counting 3 years in terms of how long you've seen them take once they become your customer, my suspicion is the actual process, might be twice that long.
Yeah, it's all over the place, but it's not a function of us, right? Our APIs are there. We've got beautiful, clean APIs. We expose GraphQL as well. Like, everything's nice and documented. They could do it in a day. They could do it in 10 years, right? It depends how functional or dysfunctional they are.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, as vendors, right? Like we sort of provide the tools, but there's also some kind of like recognition that, we kind of started developing in the sales process, because we just got a sense of, like, based on the org and their level of sophistication, how likely they were to move quickly. And obviously, like, that's what we need to know as vendors, just to project, this deal is going to maybe closes this quarter, and this deal's going to push out a couple quarters. I'm not going to be surprised if this deal pushes out. But I think it's also like useful, from a hey, I work inside an organization and I'm part of the team, but like, it feels like it's taking a long time. What are the factors? What are the reasons that it's taking a long time? And very useful for sort of like for the audience, for you to just kind of like list out sort of what you see as taking, again, 3 months if there's a skilled kind of team that's had experience with these technologies versus, more kind of like 3-year side. I think we've covered sort of a lot of bases here. I just have a couple questions before we sort of close and wrap up, which is like, number one, like, how do you see agencies and sort of like, whether those be like smaller agencies or like larger SI shops, so like, how do you see them playing into the process?
Most of our customers use agencies and we recommend them in some way. It's pretty rare to not use one at all, just because you'd much rather bring in an organization that's done this 10 times at scale, and they can do it faster and cheaper than you can yourself. And they can provide a lot of expertise and guidance and things like that. So that's very helpful to do. I do have to say, though, there are a number of organizations I've seen that internally have done it with their own staff, and that's been fine too. But we usually recommend that they go with someone else.
Yeah. Us as well, although it obviously depends whether they already have the resources to do kind of in-house or not, but some do and some don't. What would you see as like a good guideline to choosing kind of an agency, partner along the journey?
Somebody who we've partnered with, and we tend to have very dedicated, we have a broad range of partners, going from the pure agency design types all the way to the hardcore SIs with many different delivery models. But we as a company, and I think most companies, like to do business with a handful of partners at scale. So come to us, would be happy to make recommendations based on the specific use case. And we have, 5, 10-ish that get the lion's share of our business at commercetools. And I think you see that across in any industry. It's only a handful that really do this well at scale.
Yeah. We have a Netlify agency partner program as well, and what we see is like folks that kind of come to us, we're able to give them a kind of a personalized recommendation, because to your point, not only have we seen, not only have these agencies done the similar kinds of work 5 or 10 times, but we have sort of watched their history with kind of a variety of customers, and we can recommend, maybe this agency is better for this kind of project and that agency is better for that kind of project. So I think there's, one of the messages that I share a lot is like, look, you don't have to go this alone. We as vendors are kind of here to help with that transition, because coming back to the point that we're talking about a lot, change is hard, right? And we're all of us are kind of, it feels like all of us are like in this together, and we're certainly like trying to smooth over like the journey as teams are getting more experience and expertise in the space, and help them make that transition.
Well, and if you think about, so first, it's the right thing to do, but second, if you look at it very selfishly as a vendor, if our customers don't get live, we don't get paid, right? The customer churns. So everybody's incentivized to make sure that everything goes well, and it does, thankfully. Software is really easy these days, but there's a very strong incentive for all of us to make this successful. So when our customers are working with us, we are very heavily incentivized to make sure that they get the right support they need, whether that's in-house, through a partner, some combination of the two. It's very likely we've encountered this situation and can make a good recommendation.
Yep. Well, we're coming to the close of this chat. Kelly, thanks for coming here and doing this and joining us today. As we're kind of like leading out, any sort of like any last words or thoughts about whatever?
This is pretty easy to do at this point, right? This is not some uncharted territory, right? This has been done. We've got 500 plus big enterprise customers. A lot of big companies have done this. This is not something only for the early adopters, the innovators at this point. This is something that everybody just does. We don't see our customers, our prospects buying legacy anymore. It's just the default, and that's fine. And from a product standpoint, we're very focused on selling. Again, I embrace the term, and our marketing folks take issue with it sometimes, but I think we're very much a commodity, and that's a good thing. As a vendor, if we can offer up our services to as many customers as possible, right? Even though the price per customer is lower than it used to be with a legacy model, we get dramatically more of them. It used to be, used to just sell to the mall retailers, the shoe stores, right? And that's a pretty small group of folks doing e-commerce, back in the early 2000s. But, we're now selling telcos, automotive, healthcare, it's just everyone needs commerce. So our TAM has gone up dramatically, even as the average order value per customer has dropped as well. And there's real benefits to being the vendor at scale, much like you guys are, to being that vendor at scale, offering that commoditized functionality.
That's a great way of putting it. And I think, coming back, and I'll sort of say as we close out, coming back to the web and sort of like people's experience with the web as this, because this is not just an early adopter thing, it's an early majority thing now. That just makes it makes great web experiences, great shopping experiences, all kinds of great experiences for customers and users, like available more broadly than they otherwise would be. And I think that's progress. Like it's exciting. If you're, again, here with Kelly Goetsch, of a Chief Strategy Officer at commercetools. I'm very glad to have you on here, Kelly, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great talking.